Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Sherwood Island State Park and site of Connecticut's living memorial to 9/11. I'm MATTIELLO. I'm the former director of the Office of Family Support. It's once again my honor and privilege to be the MC of tonight's ceremony and to bring warm greetings on behalf of the Governor, Lieutenant Governor, to members of the public, to all the state, local, and federal officials that are present, and most especially to the family members with whom we join as a community this evening. I just want to quickly set the table before we commence this ceremony with just a few thoughts that I want to share. So here we are, 20 years later. It's hard to believe, especially for those who have those moments where 9/11 still feels at times like yesterday. 20 years and we're still together. Still grieving, still sad, still with a profound sense of loss, but still resilient and finding ways to carry on, and we're still together. As we gather and commemorate, we're reminded by the news of the day that we continue to live in an imperfect world. In the midst of a world pandemic, there's still too much violence, too much tragedy, and seemingly not enough humanity and goodwill to conquer all the ills and shortcomings that exist. As we live our lives and we honor those we lost, we often must face the harsh reality that we can't change everything around us, not for ourselves and not in their memory. But some things have changed. 9/11 for sure has changed each of us. And of the many lessons of 9/11 tonight, 20 years out, there's one that perhaps stands above all others, and that is that an event such as that is so monumental like 9/11, it will continually evolve us and shape us as we live the rest of our lives. Especially you, the family members who have really carried the greatest burden these last 2 decades. It's inescapable. 9/11 is not something in the rearview mirror. It's not something that the occasion of its anniversary we reflect on a few facts. It's ever present in each of us, and it's etched in our souls. Even if it slips to the unconscious part of our minds from time to time, for those who experience it, however you experienced it, 9/11 is part of us. So how has 9/11 changed you? There is no one answer, and there is no wrong answer. 9/11 can only be told through many voices. Just as diverse and varied are the stories of those we lost, so too are our stories that continue to evolve now here 20 years in the making. And here is where the power of choice and our chance to change things does exist. It's in how we choose to respond to the effects of 9/11. Who have each of us become since that day? What have we allowed to change the most about ourselves? For me, my choice, my response, it's most profoundly an unwavering appreciation for everyday thankfulness. The acts of kindness, the expression of gratitude, whether I'm giving it, receiving it, or just observing it, it has never had more meaning than as the days, months, and years have followed 9/11. And so 20 years out, yes, 9/11 took something from each of us, but also gave us something. Everyday thankfulness, because it's the only thing that inches me closer to the fullness I seek in life. It's the only thing that makes me feel at my best. It's the best way I can remember 9/11, the best way I can honor everything and everyone we lost that day. And it's the only way I can greet you here each year and look at you in the eye and not be overwhelmed with grief. To make something so destructive productive requires everyday thankfulness and a very high state of it. So we have a choice, most especially 20 years out. How has 9/11 changed you? How have you responded? We have a choice, and mine's everyday thankfulness. What's yours? With that, let's commence this ceremony. And for the opening prayer, will Rabbi Michael Friedman, Temple Israel of Westport, please come forward.
Dear friends, Elie Wiesel, in his masterpiece Night, wrote, "For in the end, it is all about memory, its sources and its magnitude, and of course, its consequences." Today is far from the end, but this 20th anniversary is very significant. Of course, we are here to remember and ask God's help in remembering. And so we say, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, God of all generations, bless this gathering today. And God, grant us the gift of memory, many sweet ones of those we loved and lost, and memory of the tragedy of that day, which continues to motivate us today in so many ways. That tragedy motivates us toward compassion toward our fellow human beings, connection to neighbors and friends, love of country. May those memories be ever with us, with your blessing, O God. Amen.
And now I'd like to call upon family members Chris Vadas, Brad Bullis to come and lead us in the pledge. Please stand if you can. Please be seated. By the way, we had Brad and Chris come up and lead us because of the special role they play in preparing this ceremony. Thank you for your leadership. Appreciate it, both of you. It's now my honor to call upon Connecticut's Governor, Ned Lamont, to offer, actually, the governor and I spoke just beforehand, and I need to break from the script a little bit, and we both decided that the first voice we wanted you to hear our reflections was that of our Lieutenant Governor, Susan Bysiewicz. Ladies and gentlemen, Susan Bysiewicz.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Brian, Brad, Chris, Marie Keogh, Jim Sorensen, Dianne, Leah, all the hard workers at our Department of Administrative Services and our DEP in my office who helped put this beautiful ceremony together. And thank you to the Red Cross for providing water today and for all the work they did in the aftermath of the attack 20 years ago. I'm so honored to join all of you for this solemn occasion. We gather with heavy hearts to mourn the 161 victims with ties to our beautiful state who were killed on September 11th. This year marks the 20th anniversary of that terrible day when we lost so much. We're reminded of how vulnerable each of us is and how precious our time with each other truly is. I'll never forget that beautiful, clear, bright sunny day 20 years ago when we lost 3,000 lives. So tragically, so cruelly, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, brothers, sisters, friends, colleagues. On that day, we saw courageous acts that reminded us of America's resiliency when we came together as one. Our first responders heroically put themselves in harm's way to save others. Their training took over and they ran toward danger, toward collapsing buildings, toward fire. Last week, we were reminded again of the uncommon bravery of our first responders when we lost State Police Sergeant Brian Mole, a 26-year veteran of our state trooper force, of duty responding to flooding resulting from Storm Ida. As we remember and pay tribute to all those we lost, we also say thank you to all of the dedicated individuals who responded as rescue workers, many of whom sacrificed their own lives to save others. This year in May, we marked the first anniversary of the passing of Connecticut State Police Trooper First Class Eugene Kenneth Barron Jr., who passed away following a courageous battle with cancer as a result of his response and service in support of New York City in the aftermath of 9/11. Barron, along with other members of the Traffic Services Unit of Connecticut State Police, responded to the World Trade Center immediately following the attacks to search for possible victims and survivors and to serve as a liaison to our Connecticut families. In August, we marked the first anniversary of the passing of Timothy Burns of East Haven. For 37 years, he worked for Metro North and Conrail and was a volunteer first responder at Ground Zero. And each year on this anniversary, I remember a family friend, Bruce Eagleson, who sacrificed his life to save others. Bruce was vice president of the Westfield Group. He and his wife, Gail, who taught my two children at Farm Hill School in Middletown, lived in Middlefield. Bruce commuted to work every day to New York City. And while for us the attacks on our nation unfolded in what seemed like slow motion, Bruce ran into the South Tower and saved 10 people's lives before the building collapsed, and he lost his life. One of my friend Bruce's sons, Timothy, fulfilled his childhood dream of becoming a United States Army officer when he became a captain in the Army's 244th Air Defense Artillery Regiment. His decision to join the Army stemmed from the 9/11 attack and showed his conviction to serve his country. I won't forget that day because in 2001, I was serving as Connecticut Secretary of the State. And just like in New York, there were primary elections here in Connecticut. On my way into the office, I learned of the American Airlines Flight 11 crashing into the World Trade Center's North Tower. I arrived at the office in time to see Flight 175 strike the South Tower. Almost immediately, I started receiving calls from election officials. Would we postpone the election? We quickly decided not to. For a while, there was a lull in the voting. And then, in spite of everything, a surge of people streamed to the polls because it was something patriotic that they could do in that terrible moment to show their patriotic duty and the strength of our country under attack. In the aftermath of that horrific attack, our sense of patriotic duty grew stronger as we came together. We united and we supported one another because that's what we do in our state. That is what we do in our country. It's what we've seen in our friends and families and neighbors as we've helped each other through this pandemic. We united because the lives of thousands of families changed in a single moment. Those families were our neighbors, were our friends, our relatives, our co-workers. And at the conclusion of today's ceremony, we will do as we do every year. We will walk to the memorial and remember those we lost. The inscription on the beautiful monument reads, "The citizens of Connecticut dedicate this living memorial to thousands of innocent lives lost in 2001 and to the families who love them." To all of those who have loved and lost someone on that terrible day, our hearts, our thoughts, our prayers are with you. I can assure you that the state of Connecticut, Governor Lamont and I will never forget your loved ones for the sacrifices that you have made and the tragedies that you have endured. It's an honor for the governor and I to represent you. God bless you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And now, of course, Governor Ned Lamont.
Good evening, everybody. It's remarkable that just 20 years ago, you looked right out there, and there was the World Trade Center. I was just thinking, for 20 years, we've been coming back and remembering that day. And Brian said so eloquently, it fundamentally and essentially changed us forever. You know, maybe like Pearl Harbor did for grandparents, or Kennedy assassination, 9/11, COVID. There are some things that change us forever. And it's in part because of the incredible loss that we feel. Been here many times, listening to families. You all lost loved ones as if they just left the room. You know, many of them happened to be in a building at the wrong time or flying in an airplane. Many of them were first responders running into that building, trying to save lives. And we remember them. I tend to think a little bit about the day after September 11th as well. You know, to me, it was a sense, I remember the silence. You remember there were no planes, no noise, no nothing. It was so quiet. And I remember the world very briefly just being as one. Just the little acts of kindness as we looked out for each other and felt the pain of those who had lost, reaching out for maybe somebody alone and what we could do. I remember the headline in Le Monde, you know, do some tous les Américains. And we're all Americans that one particular day. And we felt that all over the world. And that's something else I like to remember, is those brief moments that bring us all together as one. And we remember our common humanity and why we look out for each other and why we remember days like this. You know, Susan mentioned it was been a particularly tough day here in Connecticut. We were at the memorial service for Brian Mole, a state trooper who didn't have to be out, you know, keeping an eye on the floods and keeping us safe during Hurricane Ida, and but he decided to go out and do what he could, and got swept away. And it was tough. I mean, Susan was there, and Senator Blumenthal, Senator Murphy, myself, all the state troopers, and just hearing those stories about why he did what he did and who he was. And it just reminds you, look, democracy is an incredibly messy place. And, you know, we come together and then everybody is back at each other's throats. But it's moments like these and events like these and ceremonies like these and September 12th and what we had this morning together on behalf of Brian that reminds us why we wake up every day, why we look out for each other, why we care for each other. And for me, that's what I think about on September 11th. It's September 12th, and that day that we all came together as one. And that's what I'd like to reach for, you know, every day as a state and as a country. And now we're going to remember each and every one of the folks that we lost, your family members that we lost, and they're in our hearts. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Governor. As stated earlier, the 9/11 story can only be told through multiple voices. And we're going to hear from a few family members before our reading of the names, what 20 years out means to them, what 9/11 means to them, what losing someone means to them. And I want everyone to know, and I know you know this, but what they're about to do really takes a lot of courage. So the first voice is that of Elizabeth BULLIS-WIESE, sister of Dianne Snyder. Elizabeth.
So, my sister Dianne was a flight attendant for American Airlines. She was on Flight 11, the first plane that went into the World Trade Center. And that day I felt an entire range of feelings. I had spoken with Dianne the night before, and I knew she was flying to LA the next morning. So I went to work the next day after I spoke with her and heard on the radio what was happening. I called her home hoping for some reason that she never went to work. And her 14-year-old son answered the phone. And he said, yes, she went to work. His school had been closed for a couple of days. And I asked if he had heard about the plane, and he said he had. He was watching the news. And he said, but it couldn't have been her. She wasn't going to New York. And I said, no. And then a family friend came to him after that, so he wasn't alone. And I just had this intense knowing feeling that she was on that plane, and I was stunned, and it was real but not real. And then I heard the rest, a live report on the radio, and I began to feel the horror and magnitude of what was happening. It was not only my sister. So many people were being affected. There were thousands of other people wondering and thinking of their loved ones. It was bigger than me. Realizing this made me feel so much compassion for all those other people. And so in these last 20 years, I've spoken and been with some of you, and for me, it always helps to talk about it. I think my sister and her two children, who are now 31 and 34, I see Dianne in them. She would have loved to be there with them, to see them to become the wonderful people they've become, that they are. And I think of her often in my day-to-day life, of things she would appreciate, places and things we've done together, and with our whole family. And we all miss her, and I dream of her, which is a gift. She's always doing something in life. So, thank you, everybody. It's good to be here.
And the next voice is that of Margaret ECKERT, sister-in-law of Sean Rooney.
Hi, my name is Margaret ECKERT, and I live in Massachusetts, and I'll tell you why someone from Massachusetts is here at Connecticut's 9/11 ceremony. Just before I arrived here, I went to Stamford, Connecticut, where my sister Beverly ECKERT and her husband Sean Rooney lived. They bought a big house there in 1987, and it was usually filled with friends and neighbors and family on weekends and holidays. They loved company, and my whole family grew to love Stamford, and especially the Glenbrook neighborhood. Stamford was like my second home. Well, I went to place some flowers and flags at the two sites where the neighborhood installed plaques for my brother-in-law, Sean Rooney. He was killed on 9/11. He worked for Aon Insurance Company, and he was on the phone with his wife, my sister Beverly, when the South Tower collapsed. With the phone still in her hand, my sister watched on TV as that tower fell. They had been together since they were 16 years old, and they both turned 50 in 2001. Sean was gregarious and a superb cook. He was funny and fun to be around. And Sean and Bev helped organize a neighborhood block party on the Labor Day weekend before 9/11. The neighborhood rallied around my sister, helped her and supported her every day after 9/11. Beverly worked at Gen Re in Stamford, but she soon retired, and she devoted her life, along with a small group of grieving and angry people, to make sure there was an investigation and truth from the 9/11 Commission. She also co-founded Voices of 9/11, and she lobbied in New York City for improvements to the building codes for skyscraper safety. She committed her life to make our lives safer. In 2009, my sister Beverly took a plane to Buffalo, New York, our hometown, to award the annual Sean P. Rooney Scholarship that she established at Sean's high school, and to be with family on what would have been his birthday weekend. Her plane crashed, killing everyone on board. So for me, 9/11 links Sean's death and Beverly's death. If it hadn't been for 9/11, Sean would not have been killed, and if he hadn't been killed, Beverly wouldn't have been killed. And yes, they were both killed by airplanes. Again, Stamford was wonderful, supporting my family as we all tried to come to grips with Beverly's death. The Glenbrook neighborhood then installed a plaque for Beverly too, next to Sean's, and they named the little place Liberty Park. Like many of you, we revisit the pain of that day on each anniversary, and like many of you, I'm sure you've been asked about your reflections on this 20th anniversary. And a thought came to me as I was in Stamford a little while ago. For all the horror of the day, people pulled together to support each other. My own neighbors in Massachusetts and my adopted neighbors in Stamford reached out with casseroles and kind words. We smiled at strangers. We were eternally grateful to the first responders and our troops who went above and beyond. They saved over 25,000 people that day, and they continue to keep us safe every day. And God bless Brian Mull. At that time, nobody cared about politics because it did not matter. We were all just people caring for each other. The wonderful people of Stamford did it. The remarkable people of Gander, Newfoundland did it when 38 commercial planes were forced to land at their airport on 9/11. People all across America cared for each other as fellow human beings. In my religious tradition, we are all children of God, no exceptions. Faith gives us, wisdom usually comes at a price, and 9/11 was too high a price. But we can pull wisdom from the rubble to not perpetuate the hate that commandeered the 4 planes on 9/11. Faith gives us opportunities to see if we've learned anything, to see if we are any wiser now. How are we treating each other today? How are we treating our troops and first responders today? How will we treat the refugees who will soon arrive in our communities from Afghanistan? They helped our troops. Will we help them? We know we can do it because we did it after 9/11. Kindness is a muscle that needs more exercise, for sure. September 11th has been designated as a day of remembrance and service. I don't care if it's hokey. We can all pull together and do some act of kindness to honor the dead, the survivors, the families, the responders, the troops, our neighbors, and not ask who they voted for, because it doesn't matter. This ceremony is an act of kindness. Thank you to the wonderful state of Connecticut and the people of Stamford. Thank you to the governor and lieutenant governor, Bradley and Brian, and to the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection for this beautiful pavilion and the names of our loved ones etched in stone, looking out onto the timeless ocean. Thank you.
Our third and final voice is that of KATHRYN HEBERT, sister of Adam J. Lewis.
Good afternoon. My name is KATHRYN HEBERT. Adam Lewis was my brother. He was a father, a husband, a son, a grandson, a nephew, a cousin, and a great friend. He worked for Keith Barrett and Woods on the 89th floor of the second tower. Despite Adam's success at a very young age, he lit up a room when he walked in, and with his intoxicating smile and bigger-than-life personality. He loved his 4 kids, his family, his friends. He loved life itself. He loved people. On this day of 9/11, my husband, Jay, a firefighter in Norwalk, and I recently returned from Russia with our newly adopted daughter, Anna. He was working, and he called, and he asked me, was Adam working? And to turn on the TV. He called right when the towers were hit. I turned on the TV, and I don't remember how long I was standing there unable to move, but I knew something terrible had happened to my brother. After that, for a long while, time stood still in a blur. I miss my brother, and even after 20 years, emotions escalate as we get closer to this day. This event gravely impacted our country, but is different for me and my family and for many of you. This annual reminder is a personal tragedy, and it is quite difficult to deal with every year. But my brother would want me to say that it is necessary that we always be reminded about what happened on 9/11 and what has been happening since then. This year, 2021, is different than any other year since that memorable, indelible mark on all of us. There are so many emotional layers, so much uncertainty, anxiety, and we still have not learned everything after 20 years. And even as 2020 unfolded in the most unpredictable, bizarre way. I continue to remain always hopeful that we will learn from 9/11 and so many more tragedies that have followed, including everything that has happened to us since the pandemic in 2020. It does sadden me that there is still so much violence, hatred, and negativity in our country and in the world. We all need to step back and do our part. This annual remembrance is not only about never forgetting an awful, despicable, violent attack on our country, our way of life, our being. Now more than ever, this reminder is about humanity, and we are all responsible for humanity, collectively and individually. We must celebrate our differences, love and care for each other, and work together. And I know it takes time. I want to thank you all for your kindness and beautiful, caring words over the years, and thank you for the recognition for the heroes of 9/11, our first responders, whom always, unconditionally, protect us and keep us safe. And for the unsung heroes, like my brother, Adam Lewis. With peace and love.
And now we will have the reading of the names to remember the uniqueness of each individual life lost on 9/11. Leading this portion of the service, I call upon Marie Keogh, a real true force of kindness and support in the days, weeks, months, and years that followed 9/11, particularly to family members in the Fairfield County area. Her service mattered then, and as does her presence here today. So, Marie, will you help lead us in the reading of the names?
Good evening. The following family members will be reading the list of names today. Chris Vadas, brother of Brad Bottas, Barbara Therkoff, sister of Thomas Therkoff, Mary Henwood, mother of John Henwood, and Donna Hughes, wife of Paul Hughes.
Lawrence Abel, Trooper First Class Kenneth Barron Jr., Brian C. Bennett, Jeffrey D. Bittner, Christopher J. Blackwell, FDNY, father of Alex Blackwell, Alan Patrick Boyle, Alexander Brzezinski, Francis Henry Frank Brennan, Thomas M. Brennan, Timothy Michael Burns, Joseph M. Calandrillo, Edward Calderon, Sandra Campbell, Alejandro Castano, Juan Cabello.
Stephen P. Cherry, Kevin Francis Cleary, Jeffrey W. Cloud, Keith Eugene Coleman, Scott Thomas Coleman, Margaret Connor, Kevin P. Connors, Joseph John Copo, Dolores Costa, Brian Timus Cummins, Paul Curioli, Patrick Danahy, Anthony Demas.
Lieutenant Kevin Donnelly, Fire Department of New York, John Bruce Eggleston, Michael Egan, Ulf Ram Erickson, Eric B. Evans, Wendy R. Faulkner, Edward T. Fergus, Jr., Bradley Fetchett, Paul M. Fiore, John Fiorito, Bennett Lawson Fisher, Peter C. Fry, Richard Peter Gabriel Sr., Richard S. Gabriel,
James A. Gadil, Thomas E. Galvin, Oseni Mama Garba, Christopher Samuel Gardner, Peter Allen Gay, Peter Gerard Jelenis, Robert Gerlich, Lawrence Getsfred, Evan Hunter Gillette, Ronald Gilligan, Stephen Lawrence Glick, Wilder A. Gomez, Kiran Kumar Reddy Gopu.
Edwin Graff III, Donald F. Green, Trooper Walter Green, Jr., James A. Greenleaf, Jr., Pedro Grehan, James D. Halverson, Sean S. Hanley, Christine Lee Hansen, Peter Burton Hansen, Sue Kim Hansen, Timothy John Hargrave, Michelle Heidenberger, H. Joseph Heller, and my son, John Henwood.
Robert Higley II, James J. Hoban, Judith Florence Huffmiller, and my husband, Paul R. Hughes. 20 years, 2 decades, 1 score ago, I lost the love in my life to a senseless and demented foreign entity of terrorists. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't think of him and pray he is in a better place. May this 20th anniversary bring some peace, calm, love, and health to the only world we know and live in. I miss you, Paul. Keep shining down on our future daughter, our fantastic daughter, she still lives, and sending ladybugs. William Christopher Hunt, Thomas Edward Hines, John Eskian, Ariel Lewis Jacobs, Michael Grady Jacobs, Mark Stephen Jardim, Robert Thomas Jordan, Richard M. Keene, Peter R. Kellerman.
Maurice Patrick Kelly, William Hill Kelly Jr., Amy King, Glenn Davis Kerwin, Stephen Lamontia, Gary E. Lasco, Robert A. Lawrence Jr., Joseph A. Lenahan, Adam J. Lewis, Stephen B. Lilienthal, Gary W. Lozier, Michael J. Lyons, Edward Teddy F. Maloney, and Ada Mason.
Kevin Michael McCarthy, Juliana McCourt, Ruth McCourt, Eamon McKenney, Michael G. McGinty, Francis McGuinn, William J. Meehan Jr., Eskadar Meliku, Raymond Joseph Metz III, Joel Miller, Michael M. Miller, Cheryl Ann Moniak, Lindsay S. Morehouse.
Jude Musso, Caesar A. Murillo, Christopher William White Murphy, Daniel Robert Nolan, Robert W. Noonan, Timothy M. O'Brien, Scott J. O'Brien, James Andrew O'Grady, Christopher Orgelowitz, Margaret Quinn Orlowski, Thomas Anthony Palazzo, James Matthew Patrick, Mike A. Pelletier.
Joshua Piver, Roger Mark Rasweiler, John Destrahan, actually it's Jean Destrahan Roger, Sean P. Rooney, Michael C. Rothberg, Jason E. Sabag, Jesus Sanchez, Stacy Lee Sanders, so used to these masks, Sean Shelkey, John B. Schwartz, Randy Scott, Barbara A. Shaw, Michael John Simon, Heather Lee Smith, and Dianne Bullis-Snyder.
Gregory T. Spagnoletti, George E. Spencer III, Derek J. Starevikis, Greg William Staub, Andrew Sturgolopoulos, Madeline Sweeney, Michael C. Taru, my brother Thomas F. Thurkoff Jr., and my two friends, also on American Airlines Flight 11, Ted Hennessy and Paul Friedman, Eric Raymond Thorpe, Amy E. Toyin, Tyler Ugolin, Jonathan J. Uman, Alan V. Upton.
My brother, Bradley H. Vadas. Edward Raymond Vanacore. Frederick Variaci. James Thomas Waters, Jr. Jeffrey David Weiner. Candace Lee Williams. John P. Williamson. William Eben Wilson. David H. Winton. Christopher W. Woodencheck. Martin Phillips Wolford. John Works. Edward P. York. Charles A. Zion.
And now, stand if you can for a moment of silence for the innocent men, women, and children who lost their lives on 9/11, for the survivors of September 11th, and for the civil servants, firefighters, police officers, and military personnel who gave their lives on September 11th, and in the days, weeks, months, and years that have followed. This moment of silence will be followed by the sounding of taps.
Please be seated. To conclude our service, I call upon Pastor Cyrus Bartolome, a Church of the Assumption, Westport, Connecticut. His words will be the final ones spoken for the service. At the conclusion, family members are asked to join the governor and lieutenant governor out at the Living Memorial to place flowers, visit the site, and continue our fellowship. Please remain seated until directed. thank you for being together this evening. Pastor.
Good evening, everybody. On behalf of the parish community of the Church of the Assumption, we would like to send our love and our prayers. This prayer is an excerpt from the prayer of Pope Benedict XVI that he prayed in the Ground Zero during his apostolic visit to the United States. O God of love, compassion, and healing, look on us, people of many different faiths and traditions, who gather today at its site. We ask you, in your goodness, to give eternal light and peace to all who died, the heroic first responders, our firefighters, police officers, emergency service workers, and Port Authority personnel, along with all the innocent men and women who were victims of this tragedy, simply because their work or service brought them on September 11th. We ask you, in your compassion, to bring healing to those who, because of their presence that day, suffer from injuries and illness. Heal through the pain of still grieving families and all who lost loved ones in this tragedy. Give them strength to continue their lives with courage and hope. We are reminded as well of those who suffered death, injury, and loss on the same day at the Pentagon and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Our hearts are one with theirs as our prayer embraces their pain and suffering. God of peace, bring your peace to our violent world, peace in the hearts of all men and women, and peace among the nations of the earth. Turn to your way of love those whose hearts and minds are consumed with hatred. God of understanding, overwhelmed by the magnitude of this tragedy, we seek your light and guidance as we confront such terrible events. Grant that those whose lives were spared may live so that the lives lost here may not have been lost in vain. Comfort and console them, strengthen us in hope, and give us the wisdom and courage to work tirelessly for a world where true peace and love reign among nations and in the hearts of all.
going to get on a mic.
Cameras. We made the 7 o'clock years. So.
I'm beating it. Stay close.
Oh, Michael, here's Michael. I'll put one for Michael. Thank you. No. In the dirt all day. I've got it here. HENWOOD. Let me know.